Sponsored by Panasonic. Smart factory solutions for any mix, any volume. Introducing the new NPM W2S, the ideal placement solution for manufacturers who value reduced setup and changeover time over volume.
Welcome to Metcal here at Productronica. I'm joined by Rick Nuttall. He's the European Sales Director. Welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Trevor.
A couple of new things on the booth this week. First, we're looking at a preview of a product you're really going to be bringing out next year, which is a laser soldering system. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, it's a robotic soldering system, and it's utilising the new technology that we brought out called connection validation. And what this is a technology that actually identifies the quality of the solder joints in real time. So as you're soldering, we're able to identify what's taking place based on a complex algorithm looking at the thermal properties of the soldering tip, the temperature, the geometry, the power that's being delivered. We're using that technology to predict and forecast intermetallic growth in real time. And when we're doing robotic soldering, that's a big advantage because we can use that feature to simplify the process in terms of developing a program on a machine and improve the quality of the product that's delivered off the machine at the end.
Right, yeah. I mean, I guess one of the benefits of using robotics is the fact that you get uniformity. It does the same thing every time versus a human person who probably will approach it differently.
Well, that's right, and we're certainly seeing some demand in the market to take the human element out of the hand soldering process. By its very nature, hand soldering, it suggests a human element. So the first stage in the process is we've developed this new product behind us here called connection validation, and this delivers a whole new feature set that's going to improve the outcomes for a manual process. So we're monitoring and able to report on data, so we can talk about delivering a real-time indication of the quality of the soldering joint, but we can also collect data. So even if the operator is performing the task on a day-to-day basis like they normally would, we can actually capture data on that task without them necessarily being aware of that or having to react to it. The natural development of that is to move to a robot where the robot can react in real time to that data that we're collecting.
Well, it'll be interesting to see that as it develops, but let's concentrate now on some of the human products that you've got here, or humanly operated, if that's a correct term. You're introducing a lot more intelligence into these systems. Let's talk a little bit about some of the intelligence that you've brought in. Let's start with as you said, you mentioned the tips, for example. Can you explain how they work?
Yeah, so what we've done, we've embedded some intelligence into the soldering tip. So the traditional Metcal tip utilises our Smart Heat technology, and what that does is it looks at the power demand in real time and makes sure that we always deliver the correct amounts of thermal energy. We've now taken that a stage further by adding intelligence into the tip. The tip talks to the power supply unit, and in the power supply unit there's a microprocessor running an algorithm. The algorithm is taking data from the tip in terms of the tip's temperature, the tip's geometry, and of course the smart heat information about how much power is being developed. He's taking that information and it's using that information with some other information that's within the algorithm to forecast how the soldering process is progressing and to give the operator a real-time indication of when the soldering process is complete, rather than the operator making that decision based on, let's just say, their eyeball on the joint and saying, yep, that looks good to me, move on. We're adding some rigour, if you like, to the hand soldering process.
It's really quite a sophisticated system because it's also calculating the depth of the intermetallic and then reporting back into the algorithm when that joint is correct or fully formed. How does it alert the operator?
So there's a couple of options the operator has. When it goes through the intermetallic calculation, it's aware of the tip geometry, whether it's a 2mm chisel tip or a 5mm chisel tip. It's aware of how many joints that tip has done, so it's also aware of how old the tip is, if you like. And when the operator goes through the process, there's an LED ring right at the very end of the soldering tip where the hand is, and that tip will alert the handpiece, and the handpiece will illuminate a green LED when the process is complete.
And they can get an audible version as well?
They have the option to have an audible version, but as you and I discussed before, that may not work if there's 10 guys in a room with an audible alarm, but we can set the audible version so that it only becomes audible if there's a fault. So you only get a visual indication if everything's good, and the audible information, the audible alarm can be reserved for a warning, if you like, that something's gone wrong. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, I mean, you know, this is definitely going down the road of the smart factory. So the next stage, of course, is to extract some of that data out of the unit and do some traceability. How are you progressing with that?
So the platform is all set up to facilitate that. So into next year we'll hopefully be launching the phase 3 of this, which is allowing that data set that at the moment is being used to indicate to the operator what's taking place, and will allow that data set to be exported into a customer's system where they can use that data set to decide whether that particular process needs to stop and the factory needs to take notice of something that's going wrong within the hand soldering process. So that the system has got an I/O port, we've got software ready to go. What we don't have at the moment is the interconnectivity. Once we've got the interconnectivity module up and running, you'll be able to take that data set and either use our own proprietary app, which will allow you to analyse the data, or you can take the raw data yourself and you can look at the information coming out of the hand soldering process and take appropriate action.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's great to see, Rick. I mean, that the machines are developing all the time. You're going, as I say, it's a journey. This smart factory thing is a journey, and you're taking the baby steps, but you're taking the right ones.
That's right. We're getting ourselves ready for what's inevitable, I think, with Industry 4.0 over the next few years.
Oh, super. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today, Rick, and we'll look forward to seeing the next generation, hopefully by Apex.
Okay, thanks very much, Trevor.